Hello, my divine, infinite human beings, world that is, ever has been, and ever shall be. And today finds Kiki and me here in Sicily, having a little cappuccino and cassata, my favorite. And I want to talk to you today about the truth about the Roman Catholic Church. This is kind of a serious topic, and I just want to say that I love living in Italy, and I love Italians, and some of my best friends are devout Catholics, so I love Catholics, and they're very devotional people, and I love their festivities, you know, their saints' days and all this stuff. It's a lot of fun, and their processions. I really enjoy it, and I choose to live here. But I think it's time, as we bring all the truths out, we really need to come to grips with the, you know, chiaro scuro, the dark and light of our existence, and with this, the history, the true history of the Roman Catholic Church, and what's happening now on the planet, and the symbolism of the Pope's death. All right. So to really understand this, you have to know the hidden history. And the hidden history is the Romans were probably one of the most destructive forces on the face of this planet in terms of hunting out and killing and raping the true Krystic Tribes. And these are the true Christians, and I say Christians with a capital K, R-Y-S-T, Krystic Tribes, okay? Like in the Krystala spiral. And these were the people who held the higher genetic codes, who maintained the law of one principle, the respect for all living things, and maintained very sacred records, ancient scrolls that contain the truth about our history, the forbidden science, the true science, which is colonic science, which is spirituality. There is no division between spirituality and science. They're the same. And also much information about the times we are now in, and the whole ascension process. And the controllers are the fallen angelics. But what happened is the Romans, you know, when they invaded all these, expanding their empire, they first of all took over, like I said, the people. They enslaved them. They took the women that had high genetics and, made them their wives, or, to bear their prodigy, to continue their line, because their fallen draconian and Anunnaki-Tothian mixtures were falling in genetics, and they were de-evolving. And they also confiscated these beautiful Tartarian structures that we've talked about on the Infohuman Talk Show. I'm Elizabeth Monroe. I'm the host of the Infohuman Talk Show, and the author of the book, The Infinite Human, and all this is in there if you're getting confused, or you want to connect the dots, or you want more information on this. But they took over all these structures, and they called them their own. They really just founded them, and they repurposed them, and they made them their, palaces, and their forums, and their colosseums, and their cathedrals, and, their Vatican. So these were all ancient Tartarian structures that they unplugged, and that generated free energy and kept the frequencies high. And they unplugged them. In fact, the whole St. Peter's of Rome was an ancient Tartarian structure that provided high frequency and free energy. They unplugged it, and then, to make matters worse, to lower their frequency, they began performing their satanic rituals to dirty the ley lines. So that's what they did. And then the worst probably of all thing they did was when they expanded their empire, and they actually just became, during the reset, they became the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. And they kept expanding their empire into the Inquisition, into the Knights Templar that went and destroyed all the goddesses. The whole goddess, we call it a cult, but really it was the goddesses were maintaining our planet in alignment with the divine infant source, through the crystalline spiral of life, and through their toning rituals and keeping it in a high frequency. And they overthrew them, and they took all their ancient knowledge, all these ancient transcripts and scrolls, and they did that during the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, and they attacked principally the indigenous people and the women. And in Europe, they used something called the witch's hammer, which said basically anyone that was not Christian had absolutely no rights. So you could enslave them, you could murder them, you could rape them, you could take their land, you could take their gold, which is what they did when they expanded to the Americas. And they also took very, very important sacred scrolls and documents that contain the truth about our hidden history, ascension mechanics, and the true science. They also did this with the Cathars. They came in south of France and raided and destroyed them. And there is still supposedly remaining a sacred scroll that is still there and is to be found. And then during the Spanish Inquisition, which was horrid, they attacked especially women. Over 5 million women were tortured and murdered, and women that collected herbs, and that healed, through their natural healing powers, were impaled, which meant a sharpened pole was shoved into their vagina, and it pierced through slowly every day more of their organs, and you could hear their screams from miles away. It was supposedly one of the most painful deaths. Now, I bring this horrible stuff up because it's still in our holographic collective field, because many of us, and also reincarnation was in the Bible, and all these sacred documents were actually written down by the true Christ. And we need to know this, because we need to heal this, because these are lives that we've lived through, whether you call them past lives or just alternate identities, since there is no time. There are things that we've all experienced, and they're all coming out, flushing out as the higher frequencies pour in. And another thing is the whole story about the Christ, because what they did was, during the Nicene Council, they got together, and all this information they had, they edited it out of the Bible. They took the false story of the false Christ and the crucifixion, which was not the true Christ, and then they capitalized on that, and on the misery of that, and on the crucifixion implants, and on the suffering, and on the martyrdom, and that became the Roman Catholic Church, which became all of Christianity, which is how the entire Christian religion, and I don't care what factor you are, you're worshiping the false Christ, and it's been all co-opted to cause you to worship the crucifixion of your own inner Christ. So this is all being corrected now, okay? And the thing that got me actually thrown off of Facebook today, which is interesting, because I know I rummaged around and got into something, is that, first of all, this Pope was unlike the other popes. He was actually factored out to become the head of the one world order religion, which would be, Roman Catholicism. And it's interesting that he died. I really think he was not supposed to die, but he's a symbol of what's happening as these high frequencies flood in from the Crystal River failsafe, the Krystic codes coming through the sun, as the solar flares from the Nomi seed, and the Schumann resonance keeps spiking and shifting us into higher timelines, higher frequencies, higher dimensions. As this all is culminating, the frequencies are so high that these beings, and yes, the current Pope was very satanic, demonic, being that practiced underneath the Vatican, in the catacombs under there. They had regular satanic rituals of sacrifice, child sacrifice especially. It's a horrific thing that polluted. And under there is a Stargate. So it polluted those ley lines and this very powerful Stargate, because the Vatican, before it was Rome, of course, which was already polluted, but it was never supposed to have become the center of the Catholic Church. It was Peter's mistake a man of my own heart. He should not have gone there, and it should not have been founded there. But, it was part of the Romans' start of getting us off the true organic timelines onto these false timelines, which are now coming to completion. That's the good news. This is a year of the 9, and all these false timelines are fizzling out and completing themselves. So the death of the Pope is something very very actually wonderful, because you're seeing, as the frequencies are rising, these powerful puppets of the fallen angelics are unable to sustain a physical body. We saw it with the Rockefellers dying, the Rothschilds, the King Philip, one of the most evil men ever to inhabit a body, entities, Queen Elizabeth, and now the Pope. And a lot of people say Charles is next. I think he may have already been, taken out, because they can't sustain life, because they need to feed off of misery, pain, and loose from the lower frequencies. That's how they maintain their hybridized, Frankenstein's, stolen genetics. And, so this is a good thing, because he's not going to be the one world order head, and they're not going to be able to replace him with someone as evil, because someone with all that miasma and that need to feed on loosh is not going to be able to survive, because the organic earth has ascended to the point where her ley lines are purifying and they're becoming crystallized. So there's not that loosh available, and there's not that child sacrifice, because if you've been listening, a lot of these, these dumbs and these areas where they performed them are being cleaned out, and they can no longer do that, because the frequency is so high, the vibrational frequency. So that's the good news. Now, the question I ask you is what we need, and what is our birthright, and what is our cosmic right to have, is all that information that the Romans and the Catholics stole from all the Krystic tribes, from all the indigenous people all around the world. It is all under the Vatican in 50 miles of hermetically sealed libraries. Okay, and I just watched Angels and Demons with Dan Brown. Tom Hanks stars in it. I rewatched it last night, and it's filmed in there. I mean, they show it. They show that library filled with ancient texts, rows and rows and rows. In fact, there's a scene where they try to kill, Tom Hanks, the character, and in the library. So, plays a very dominant role in that film. So if you get a chance, look at that clip, because that is where all the information that even Yeshua, Sananda, Melchizedek, the true Christ, took so much time to come back and write down. That is the information where speakers have been designated every several hundreds of years to download this information and to speak it out. This is the information on the Sitaduri CD tapes, discs, and the Emerald records in the Mahabharata that is due us, that was given to us, that explains everything that I've talked about, that Ashiana Dean, who is the current speaker 1, has been talking about since around the turn of the millennium. This is the information that we get bits and pieces and glances of in other texts that have been left, but this is what we need to have now. It's been written down for us to guide us through these times. So I think that's something we all need to ask for, because it is our birthright. We need to reclaim those ancient texts and have that library opened up and given to ethical, responsible scholars who can maintain it and translate it and make it public. All right, I hope that information helps you, and ciao from Italy.